absolutely.
All right, welcome Jayce Nall to the 36th episode of the Advisor Tech Book Live podcast. What problem are you solving and who are you solving it for?
Um, we're we're trying to bring enterprise grade intelligence and information to the entire advisory ecosystem. So, whereas historically access to data, information, intelligence about the RIA industry has been kind of murky and hard to get at or behind really large paywalls. We're trying to lift everybody up and give everybody access to as much information as we possibly can, so that kind of everybody who might want to analyze, benchmark, or just get a better understanding of the industry at large and just better understand how things kind of work can do that. So that's what we're doing.
That's funny. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and then there's talk about like human intelligence, but you use the words enterprise grade intelligence. So maybe there's this third kind of intelligence.
when I when I
enterprise,
when I
enterprise intelligence.
when I say enterprise grade, I mean, yeah, there are other providers out there who have kind of done similar work where they use regulatory data. Like AlphaSense does this with um, the filings that publicly traded companies need to file 10Qs and things like that. So when I say enterprise grade, I mean we're bringing stuff that has historically been very expensive and hard to get, especially if you're an individual. We're bringing that to the masses.
Yeah. And this is mainly for SEC registered firms, I assume.
Yep, that's right. All 100% SEC registered firms.
Is it possible to get state registered data, or is that data so siloed and difficult to access and not standardized, it'd be hard to get?
It's possible. We're working our way through what's available to us. So, our new platform is essentially we built an information repository for all RIA filings, and we actually have way more data behind the scenes than we're even exposing in the web application. So we're going to work our way through the mountain that we have right now, and then we'll kind of move on based on what our users are asking for to explore and interrogate other data sources.
Cool. So that's a good leading off point. So you already have beta users. Is there a breakdown within your beta users of like different ICPs,
Yeah,
whether they
yeah,
be advisors, fund managers, consultants in the industry?
yeah. So we launched the prototype back in August of 2025, and in that um, in that onboarding flow, you've got a few little selections you can make. Say, hey, I'm a registered. I work in an RIA firm. I'm a service provider, so maybe a wealth tech or a consultant or a fund manager, or in the M&A space. And what we found is that there was a really even distribution of all of those folks. So there were a ton of users who are either worked at or ran an RIA, and they're using it for competitive intelligence. They're using it to benchmark and get a feel for where they are in the landscape. And then a lot of folks on the service provider side are using it to try to better understand their clients and prospects. The M&A is kind of that kind of speaks for itself. But the really surprising thing from the beta, or the we call it the prototype, was end investors. So people who were actually looking to hire a financial advisor and
Oh,
were doing
interesting.
due diligence. Yeah, and that was we could tell based on the search results that led them to our platform, which informed a lot of the thinking in the new version of the product that we're going to be rolling out in a month or so. So we're trying. So it's pretty difficult because this is really dense information, but we're trying to be able to provide that for everybody and give them tools that they can use contextually to help them with whatever their need is.
Yeah. I mean, in my LinkedIn post this morning, data has been very expensive. Like to get a basic data package for advisors is like around 12K a year at most of the providers. But then RIA data specifically, 1,500 a month or some price that like most people won't even consider. Um, but what was super cool when I first found RIApulse.com was like it was free. The UI was really pleasant. And it was just really cool. I could tell you were building something that would be really useful to a lot of people, but never even considered that like end clients, like the consumers, would end up looking up firms on it. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's I when I first started digging into the regulatory data, it was out of necessity. Like I was working at a firm called Practify. They do CRM for advisors, and I was trying to find this information for myself. I was doing product growth and trying to get a feel for what makes a great Practify client. And something like we had a lot of information internally, but if you could, my thinking was if I could find those similarities, like what makes a great customer for us, then we could use that to more intelligently go after firms that would be a great fit for us. And when I tried to find it at some of the providers that you're talking about, I just didn't like the buying experience. It didn't make any sense to me. I buy a lot of technology, and I'm not shy on spending money for tools that will help me. But if I go to your website and it says free trial and I click it and it's a schedule a meeting with one of our salespeople, that's just friction. And
I
when I
hate that.
have
Yeah,
what
that's
yeah,
awful.
when you have a question, like I want to know this specific thing, right?
Right.
The fastest path to that is what I wanted. So when I left Practify, um, and was thinking, okay, what challenge do we want to take on? That just struck me as a structural issue within the ecosystem that I thought we could solve, and we've gotten to a point that we're pretty excited to roll this thing out.
Yeah, not necessarily the topic of this, but just like prospect experience is a super interesting thing to study. Like I read CityWire articles, I hit a wall and it said like you've read the maximum number of free CityWire articles. Um, it didn't even give me any pricing. It was like just tell us you're interested, and then I get an email from a person. It still doesn't have a price, and it's like schedule a call, and it's like this is a very complicated process to like read one article about Peter Maluk or something.
There's a place for more traditional enterprise like B2B sales, and
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense based on the company and how it's set up. Um, I'm not here to knock any of the other providers who do similar work, but it wasn't the experience that I wanted,
right.
and I just kind of had this sense that if I was having that challenge, um, then probably a lot of other folks were, and that was validated in the prototype we put out because, like I said, we had people from all over the ecosystem looking for this information. So yeah, so that informed some of the changes we're making in the new version. So you won't even need to log in to access a lot of what we're going to make available for free.
That's
So
awesome.
really, just trying to give people as much as we possibly can, and then monetize through time saving features and features that help professionals get more out of the data that we're giving them.
Yeah. Are you prepared to do a demo live on this, or do you want to just talk through it and then point people to a video?
We can do a demo. I'll have to figure out how to share my screen here.
Yeah, there's a little laptop symbol with an arrow on it at the bottom.
Yeah. All right. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right. So RIA Pulse, what we've kind of started off with this RIA database. So we have every single SEC registered RIA in our database, every single field from all of their regulatory filings. There's a ton in here, so it can look a little daunting at first, but we've done a ton of work in applying basically metadata tags to all of the data points we have available. So um, if you don't even, you might not yet know specifically what you're looking for, you can just start searching. So if I wanted to apply a filter to this list, and maybe I'm only interested in firms that work as a pension consultant, I can just start typing in pension, and I'm going to get all of the fields that we have related to that. And so I can apply these to the view, and maybe I'm looking for firms that do a certain percentage of their book value is from pension plan consulting, so I can just add that to my view. I can apply a filter. We'll just say greater than 5%, and that gets applied, and I can start working with these filters to start narrowing things down. Um, one of the big time saving features that we've put into this is the raw regulatory data is not really workable in this way where we can add filters um, and kind of surface what makes sense for people. We've done a lot of work to kind of consolidate things where they make sense into a single value that you can work with. So services is a great example of that, where this is like 17 different fields in the ADV filing. We consolidate it down so we can so you can filter on it, um, add those like that. Um, and once you've put your list together, you can start exploring these things. So, Joe, you had a comment about growth. And so if
Yeah,
I look at any one of these firms,
specifically
let's
like
actually,
organic. There's a lot of RIAs that like aren't even in the business of investment management or financial planning. They're like internet RIAs, or they're running a fund or something. So like,
yeah.
what are some good filters to get to pure RIAs, and then figure out which ones are growing fast, and then maybe even how they're growing.
Yeah. So what I'm showing you right now is actually, so you emailed me that I think on Friday. Hey, how do I use this to find growth?
Right.
And I'm working on an additional feature here that we're going to showcase. I've added a handful of new growth metric fields that can help us narrow that down a bit. So you'll see I actually switched to a different view. You can sort of mix and match filters and columns and sorting, and switch between different saved views to easily come back to what you've got or what you need. I've got this growth metrics view that I just quickly put together before we got on here. And we talk about organic growth. Well, first we need to look at growth rates specifically. So I've applied this total AUM compound annual growth rate over the last 3 years filter.
Okay.
And so we're going to look at anything between 15 and 75%. That's a really big range, right? But we'll start off there. And I've also added these fields for client growth. So this is looking at that compound annual growth in terms of total clients, right? The just the head count. And then employee growth as well. And so you can see how looking across just these three growth rates, you can get a quick feeling for how these firms are growing that in a way that just the pure AUM isn't really telling you.
Yeah, no,
So
that's interesting. Their number of clients is decreasing, but their AUM is increasing, and their employees are increasing. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So if we open these guys up, we can probably find find an explanation for all that. So right off the back, we can see they've got a big banking client. Uh,
Okay.
a lot of non-discretionary assets under their banking client type. And I'll just quick run through the overview page. We've got the kind of high level information that can tells you what this firm is all about. But if I look in our analytics tab, we look at data over time. So we've got that big growth rate spike from March of last year to January. If I scroll down, I can actually kind of see how that happened. Clearly, they took on a some kind of business with a bank at that point in time. And
Yeah.
so while they're and nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's probably working out very well for them. But if I am looking at it from a perspective of trying to benchmark organic growth within the wealth management space specifically, this might give me a little bit of a false signal. So you could come in and say, well, I want firms where yes, the AUM is growing, but let's tighten that up to something like, I don't know, 15% to 35%. And let's also look for client growth, because you'd think if folks are growing organically, that's probably going to track kind of closely to that AUM growth rate. So we can apply that as well. And maybe you want to just also make sure that they're not just bringing on new advisors or acquiring other firms. So we'll set a threshold on employee growth for less than, let's say, 10%. And so right there, we've already narrowed down. I've got firms between 500 million and 5 billion who've got this specific growth trajectory, and we can open these up and kind of explore them individually. So now I haven't looked at any of these, but I think what you'll find is they're kind of growing with the same sort of client demographic that they've historically had, but they're just adding more and more clients over time.
Cool.
Um, One of the other things that we've gotten here is when I say we have the a complete information repository, I mean we've taken every single regulatory filing and we've got it in our database. So whether we're even exposing it on the web app or not, we've got close to 100 gigabytes of regulatory data, and everything that you see on that list view, you can always come back and check for yourself. So, we're giving you a growth rate, but we're also giving you the ability to go audit exactly where all that information came from.
Okay.
So we have the entire ADV, the brochures, the Form CRS, any withdrawal filings in this filing explorer, so that you can always go and kind of interrogate the direct source.
I'm still seeing the growth metrics screen. I don't know if you opened another tab or something.
Oh, I've been working in a separate tab for the past couple of minutes, I think.
No, yeah, I saw it the first time. There we go. Now I can
There
see
we
it.
go.
I
Yeah,
see
I
it all.
opened it in a new tab. So, yeah, so quickly we can see, this firm has been growing with the same sort of client demographics that they've had for the past few years. It's just they're adding over time without growing their employee count. That filing explorer is over here. So if I want to search for any regulatory filing value, I can do that for all time. So this is going all the way back to, for this firm, 2012 would have been their first filing. I think we have it back to about 2002. Um, so if you want to go and look at all of their AUM fields over the past 20 years or so, you can go find that there.
So is a basic filter that I think I saw turned on in the beginning was like last report in the last 13 months. Is that a pretty good filter to make sure it's an active RIA?
Yeah, that's right. So requirements are at least once a year. We do 13 months just in case it's, you know, covering somebody who's a little bit late. That's a default filter applied, and that's you're probably gonna. We always have that set by default just to make sure it's active, but you can always deactivate that, and you can go through firms that aren't active anymore if that's something that you're interested in.
Okay. And just to clarify, this is the paid version of RIA Pulse, right?
There are elements of what I'm showing you that are paid, but when this new version of our product launches next month, a lot of what I'm showing you is free. So
Okay.
actually, everything on this screen right here is going to be available for everybody completely free. We're trying to monetize through features rather than data. So our analytics fields are an area where we're taking that regulatory data and then we're applying some math and some calculations to help people more quickly get to where they want. So the analytics fields are part of a paid tier. Historical data is also part of a paid tier. So if you want to go through a firm history, that's going to be part of our pro plan. But if you're just trying to get the latest information, all of that's going to be available for free for everybody without a login.
Okay. Do you mind going through like a creative planning or a root financial and just like showing us all the different features in in a profile?
Sure. So here is root. I guess we'll start off with the overview page. So overview, we're just trying to give you kind of a snapshot of what this firm is all about. So we've got kind of basic information about, right here is their client breakdown. Who does this firm serve? Primarily high net worth individuals, some non high net worth individuals, and a tiny sliver. I can barely click on there for a pension consultant. We have their AUM history for the past 5 years. That's available for everybody as well. So even though I said Historical data is something we're putting behind the pro tiers. We're making some of that historical data available for everybody. Kind of core business information, core client demographics. Now down here we've got affiliates. Now this affiliates tracking is something kind of new, and this will be part of a paid plan as well. We look through all of the reported business affiliations in the regulatory filings. We normalize them, and then we basically track them over time. Both firms that both businesses that the firm is claiming that they are affiliated with. So for Root here, they've got, they're working with Altruist, they work with Schwab, but also if any other firm has claimed Root as an affiliate, then that would show up in this tab as well. Now you see that more for those larger firms that have kind of sub-advisory relationships or broker dealers as well. So you kind of have both way relationships there, and that's tracked over time. So we can kind of detect when people have added these types of relationships. So that's for custodians. It's also for broker dealers, tax firms, accounting firms, anything that's reported in that ADV. This is actually a really big value add because the way this data gets reported is completely freehand. There is no drop down box when a firm goes to file ADV that says Altruist Financial LLC. It's going to be typed out however they want. So Charles Schwab, as an example, I think I've seen spelled out 72 different ways. Right. So
Okay.
we've got an algorithm that attempts to match those entities together so we can consolidate it down so that you can actually use it as a filter in the list view there. So I could add in a affiliate filter for custodians, and I could start typing altruist. I'm on a local environment right now where we don't have all of our data, just to save my computer some storage, but just as an example of how you could use that as a filter.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to the overview page, then we have our analytics tab. So this part is still being informed by our early access users, the folks who are using this version of the product today. We're really interested in seeing or hearing what people want to see in this view. So right here is sort of a growth rate comparison against the S&P. Obviously, Root is crushing it. There's that historical client distribution over time that we were looking at earlier. And then just some breakdowns on some operational metrics. So AUM per employee, average account size, average client AUM, client distributions in a kind of a more detailed way there. Now, this page is probably going to see a lot of changes from now to a month from now, just based on what people want to see here. I'm curious, Joe. I mean, if you had a question, if there's like a question you always wanted to be able to get get to the bottom of for any firm that is related to their history, like what are you trying to find when you look up firms?
Yeah, I mean, so like for Rue to be like, why are they growing so fast? I mean, I know it's from a YouTube channel, but and that would be hard to find maybe from SEC data. Um, but I think it'd be interesting to see like benchmarks. So like they have 33 million per employee, um, comparing to firms growing at a similar rate or something, or comparing to other firms based out of California or Texas or um, I think benchmarking would be something I would be interested in.
Yeah, and benchmarking is definitely on our roadmap. Anybody who's used the prototype version of RIA Pulse, which you can still check out today at riapulse.com, they'll be familiar with the benchmarks that we had in there. Now, those are going to eventually make their way back into this new version, but probably with a bit of a different lens, because what we found from the benchmarks is everybody has kind of a different idea about what should be included and what shouldn't. We've kind of taken the stance that we want to give you the tools to run whatever benchmark you want. So today, the best way to do that is basically going to be to add all of those well, let's say AUM per employee, right? to add that to your list page here, to apply whatever filters you want. You know, you mentioned California, right? So go and apply all of the filters you want. You might even say, I only want firms that, I don't want firms that do anything besides uh, investment, individual portfolio management or financial planning, just to be really certain that it's all kind of traditional wealth management work, and then just export it, pull it out. You'll get a CSV file which you can pop into Excel, and with like a 2-minute little formula, you'll get your custom benchmark. So whereas kind of other platforms are going to give you their take on the benchmark, we will certainly end up adding our take as well. But the real benefit here is that everybody can now author their own research. So you're not reliant on a quarterly report that the custodian puts out or that some of the other traditional market, market intelligence researchers write.
Yeah. I think another thing that might be useful is like just like in investment management or investment portfolios, you can put like 2 or 3 portfolios next to each other to compare things. I think it'd be cool to like pull up root versus creative planning or something and like run comparisons across them or something.
Yeah, yeah. Comparison, that was a big ask from the prototype as well. So being able to kind of stack these things next to each other, it's tricky because we're kind of trying to be a neutral party here, not necessarily saying who's better, who's worse, but just
Right.
giving everybody the information. Um, I think we'll definitely add benchmarking back at some point in the future, but in a way that is still in line with putting the power in your hands to
Right.
run the analysis you want. Um, what I'm
I
looking at
like
right.
something I noticed from all of our conversations is you have very strong points of view about how things should be done or how you're doing things. Um, and I think this is important, not just for the work that you're doing, but for everybody that's marketing their company. Like you've got to have very strong points of view around how you do things. Um, and I think we'll start to recognize that more and more is that advisors, firms, software companies will have very strong points of view that will come across in a lot of their content.
I think software is really personal. Um, the tools you use, maybe it shouldn't be this way, but if you think back to the Mac versus PC, commercials, like extremely successful ad campaign that really painted Mac users and PC users in boxes, and as much as that was sort of a way for Apple to say, uh, if you use a Mac, you're cool, and if you use Windows, you're a dork. Um, I think people definitely develop tastes and preferences that go beyond what the product actually does. One of like what we're trying to do with RIA Pulse is be sort of this information repository for the industry to kind of all agree and rally behind. We're not selling you our our benchmark that's going to solve all of your problems, and we've got the secret sauce. So give us $10,000 for it. We're trying to give people. We're making tools for humans to use and apply their own hunches and their own intelligence to find what they're looking for.
Yeah. So I mean, you basically have a giant database of firms with every data point that is reported, and then I mean, it seems like the main feature is just the filters. So it's like a almost unlimited number of ways to slice the data.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a foundational piece, and one of the reasons we needed to rebuild the whole platform from the prototype. So a lot, like just crazy, crazy amounts of work went into that. And now that we're sitting on this sort of foundational piece of technology, now we're saying, okay, what features can we build?
Yeah.
So like right now, and I know you've got takes on AI. I've got takes on AI too. I think we're pretty in line with each other. But I am going to show off one of the LLM AI features here. So this is
Yeah.
our pulse report. And this is a quick snapshot of the firm. So I can click a button, I can generate it, and this is unique to me. I'm the only one who gets this particular pulse report, and I can always come back and regenerate it when there's new information available. But what this does is it takes all of the regulatory data that we have on platform. It then goes and scours the web looking for any sort of press releases or articles written about the firm in kind of trade press, and even looks at the firm's website if it can find it, and comes back with a sort of a summary report about the firm, geared toward giving you a quick breakdown of who they are, what they do, how they present themselves, to kind of quickly understand who they are. Um, this is this is an area where we think we're using AI in a way that makes a lot of sense. It's not, here's the robot that's going to solve all your problems and do your laundry. But what LLMs are really good at is summarizing information, and that's what we're asking it to do here. We're not telling it to give us an opinion about anything.
Right.
We're just trying to help save people time by presenting aggregated information in a readable way that you could print off or and take to a meeting.
I saw the State of the Union at the bottom. Is it pulling from a YouTube video or from a like blog, or how's it
Looks like
pulling
it's
it?
this one's pulling from something on their website, a
Okay,
blog post on their website.
cool.
Um, so that's we've got other areas where we apply what some people would consider AI. We kind of think of it more as machine learning. So that classification filter that you see here, this is an area where we've introduced machine learning into the product. There are all kinds of RIAs out there. They're not all wealth managers. You could probably have 13 different categories here if you wanted, but we've decided we're going to keep it simple and consolidate it down to three. So we use machine learning to basically find patterns for firms that we consider to be wealth managers. So they're providing investment and financial advisory services for individuals, high net worth individuals. Institutional advisory, doing that same thing, but for nonprofits, for charities, for governments, um, things like that. And then asset and fund managers, which are obviously largely creating investment products and mutual funds and ETFs and things like that. So rather than going through each and every firm and applying a tag, we've got a machine learning algorithm that says, well, what do these firms typically look like? And then we classify it based on its closest sort of exemplar firm that we use.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's. I mean, we could talk about AI for a bit. So obviously, AI is going to be in like almost everything, every software, every car, every computer. I think my main issue has been with it around communication, marketing, human relationships. Just because that's kind of been like the first use cases that get a lot of press. Where I think the people that are thinking about AI deeply and like using it well are actually not using it in those ways. They recognize that like communication needs to be personalized, and I don't know, they're not so quick to like slop out emails that AI wrote to their high net worth clients.
yeah, I when I see people evangelizing the use of AI, I get skeptical immediately, because my kind of like gut instinct for anything is, what's this person trying to sell me?
Right.
I say that here, and I am in a way trying to sell my product, right? And I've got AI features. We've got some other machine learning features that we could talk about later, but when I see people shouting from the rooftops that, "Oh man, this is going to change everything. You're not safe unless you look at my product, sign up for my class, whatnot," that starts to rub me a certain way. Now, I can't predict any better than you can about where how much of that hype is going to actually create tremendous value for people, and where it's just a bit of FOMO. I don't like receiving emails or LinkedIn messages from folks that I can clearly tell are AI written messages. It rubs me the wrong way. I have to assume that's the same for somebody who's receiving outreach about investment advice.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I say I don't like AI for that.
Right.
But for summarizing information, I mean, it does a really good job. I don't necessarily want to read an entire Form ADV Part 2 brochure to find out, hey, what's the servicing fees? What brokers do they work with? Like AI is going to be great for that. And so we're trying to apply it where it makes sense. Um, and we'll just kind of see what happens. I think there's a lot of great applications of AI. You can put in a like a learn like especially for learning and interrogating data that you have about known information rather than asking it to actually have an idea for you. That's where you start to get dangerous, and that's where people kind of get into this AI psychosis of just going down this rabbit hole of talking to a model and starting to believe everything it says, and that can just get a little dangerous and give people a false sense of um, a false sense of competence in what they're doing because they've got a little cheerleader telling them, "Hey, that's a great idea. You should definitely." It's like the South Park episode if you've seen it.
Yeah. No, it's I listen to Joe Rogan and Elon Musk talk about AI and like the different models and the different things that they're lying about, and it's like if there was ever going to be like a mass propaganda machine to spread lies at scale, like it would be through a LLM run by Google, Microsoft, Anthropic, whatever. Like the the question then is like, are these AIs being built to represent truth, or are they being built to represent whatever the programmers feel like they want to play as truth? So there's like a really foundational fabric of society that's at risk in a way. If you know hundreds of millions of people start trusting AI that it is true when it is like rewriting history and stuff.
Yeah, I think the opposite side of that argument is, well, hasn't that always been true? Right? Is this
Yeah,
just it's a new version of what was already taking place, which is um, people who own information or are the the authorities on information in a certain area have a lot of power because that's where what people are going to go to and what they're going to believe. I don't have any opinions on. Um, I don't think that the world is going to come to an end. I don't think everybody's going to be out of a job. I don't think that we're at risk of AI overlords, personally. Um, but there is kind of that opposite side of the argument, which is, well, is this any different than how it's always been? It's just a little faster at it
no,
now.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's just a leap in software capability, basically. Like we've had software's been getting steadily better, and now software's like taking a jump. I don't know. That's kind of how I
Yeah,
think about it.
but I do believe that language models are really really useful. It's a great way to learn how to do specific things.
Yeah,
I've learned a ton even about the RIA industry by asking my chatbot, what does I've spent way more time going through ADV filings than you want to know. And throughout that process, I don't come from the investment advisory world. I come more from a technology side of things. So I've had to learn a ton about this space, and I've used AI to help me like, hey, what is a pooled investment vehicle? Right? What is a wrap fee? It's great for things like that.
yeah.
Um, I do get a little skeptical when I see the LinkedIn posts, basically saying that the sky is going to fall unless you buy my product.
Yeah, it will fall. The sky is falling. Not really. I'm being facetious. Um, It'd be fun to talk through like specific use cases. So let's say a private equity investor wants to look up firms or has recently invested in a firm. Like how might that practically show up in the data? I saw Cerity Partners like just recently got like a massive investment from a private equity firm. Um, but maybe we can talk through a few specific examples.
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of I'll go through a few. I know that that your audience is primarily financial advisors and investment
Yep.
advisors. So I think the kind of most relevant thing to your audience is probably about pure benchmarking. So um, I don't have a particular firm in mind. I'm just going to, what I like to do is just start typing the names of trees because there's always a thousand firms named after a type of tree. So here we go. Let's find somebody who's not too big. Uh, Joe, you're a Lord of the Rings fan, right?
Yep.
Well, this is Brandywine Oak, so we'll pick them. So if I am the owner of this firm or an executive leader at this firm, I can kind of start by looking at my profile here, and we can look at data over time. Maybe you're new to the firm, maybe you've been there for a while. But if you pop over to this similar firms tab, and you know what, I actually I'm going to need to switch to the live environment because my normally it's the normally it's the development the live environment that breaks, but in this case it's my local. Uh,
That's okay. I'll follow along. So if you guys see me looking up, it's because I have another screen and I'm actually in RIA Pulse looking stuff up.
no worries. So we'll go find those same Brandywine
Brandywine
Oak.
Oak.
There we go.
Hmm.
So if I pop over to the similar firms tab, this is another area where we're using machine learning to give you insights. So in the same way that we use machine learning to classify firms into those three broad categories, we also define a set of 25 or so data points that we use for a similarity engine. So think of it almost like strands of DNA, and you've got segments of that strand. Each segment can be between this value, that value. We do that for all firms, and what that allows us to do is surface firms that are kind of close to you in those values. So if you want to find firms that are kind of peers to you, folks that are similar to you, whether it's in the way they're in scale, whether it's client ratios, servicing fees, services provided, you're going to get all of that here in this similar firms tab. So what you might start doing is just start adding them to a watch list. So I'll click this button here and say, this is my peers. So I'll just add several of these here. And now I've got a handy little watch list here that I can use to come back to and track how are firms like me performing. I can turn on notification settings so I can kind of stay on top of any new information that's being surfaced for them. I can also get additional recommendations based on the firms in the watch list. So whereas before I was getting recommendations about my firm specifically, now I've got even more here. That's the recommendations based on the aggregate of all of the firms in the watch list. And so we can just keep adding those there, so we can sort of build up our little cohort of similar firms that we can track and see how they're performing as new information is made available. um, so that's part of it for individual investment advisors. So if you want to go in and start looking at some of these firms, you can interrogate the data just like we were doing before. You can look at their growth metrics. So compare those to yours, see what their staffing ratios look like. You can see, what kind of marketing do they do. So if I go and look at their filings, I can see what kind of advertisements that they do. I can look at what their fees are like, and then once we've got the part two, part three brochure filings in the system, I can even go and start seeing what their actual fee structures look like. Um, so that's kind of the way you can use RIA Pulse to stay on top of firms like you in your industry, but you can also be a little aspirational about it. So maybe there's I can't remember exactly what the size of that firm was, but maybe I want to see a firm that's like mine, but that has grown much larger, and I want to find out, well, how did they do that. I can look through those recommendations and find something that's a bit larger. So this firm's 2.4 billion, my firm's more in that 250 range, and I can go and look at how things have changed over time for them and maybe find out what it was that really brought things on. Maybe it was a new service that was added. Um, Maybe it was a specific role that they hired. Um, so I think that's how folks are using it from a sort of pure benchmarking perspective. I also know that a lot of people who watch, I know from word of mouth that a lot of people who watch your podcast, Joe, are actually on the provider side.
Yeah.
So they're folks who provide a product or a service to RIAs, um, and they want to better understand the firms in their industry. So a quick way to get some value out of that from a provider side is just set up a quick view based on what it is that you're looking for in a potential client. If I think back to when I was doing software, CRM software for RIAs, we definitely had a sweet spot. So I might say, uh, here we're looking for firms that are between 500 million and 5 billion. We want firms that are growing because there's a if you've grown in headcount and we're selling you software with seats, then I want a firm that is probably going to add seats over time. So I might say the look for that employee growth rate, which of course is back in my local environment. But we can do like an AUM growth rate as well. So maybe firms that are just growing in general. So we'll say firms growing greater than 20% over compound. Well, we'll bring it down to 12. I think is the median that Schwab says. I actually had a member of your community reach out several months back asking for this specific filter because they were looking for a job. They
Okay.
were an executive at an RIA who was looking to make a move, and they wanted to go and find firms that were growing at a certain rate, and figured, hey, I think my I'm coming from a larger firm. Those firms will get a lot of value out of my experience and expertise. So you can build up these views based on specifically what you're looking for. I'm in Illinois right now, so I'll just apply that. And maybe this represents, my ideal client. We'll pick specific services, and then I can save that. And now I have this whenever I want to come back to it, and I can start adding. I can start adding those to watch lists as well. One of the things that one of our alpha testers did, which I thought was really cool, they were a service provider, they're a technology provider, and what they did is they made a watch list of their favorite clients. This is not their watch list, by the way, but
Yeah.
they made a watch list of their favorite clients, and those clients were of all different sizes and shapes. Some of them were large, some of them were small, some of them did different lines of business. But what they wanted to do was say, okay, you've got this recommendation system. Give me recommendations of firms that are on average similar to these firms, and then I'm going to actually go and create a prospecting list out of that. And then they would go and investigate those firms individually and try to find what is it here that makes these things similar that I wouldn't necessarily find just looking at the top level numbers. Um, and then when you go and you start talking to those firms, it's just so valuable to have an understanding of their history before you even start that conversation, because it's like we were saying about these annoying AI emails. When somebody, I have no problem talking to somebody who's wants to pitch a service to me, but I'm more inclined to talk to them if they have clearly done some research. So if you've spent 10 minutes looking at a firm overview and RIA Pulse, you've looked at kind of their history and things that have happened over time, you're going to have a much better idea of this firm and what they're about before you go into that meeting than if you had just kind of pulled it off a lead list, which is one of the other kind of tools in this space that uses regulatory data to basically sell advisor contact information to providers to go hit you up for put in their email campaign tool. I would much rather have somebody who spent some time really digging into this stuff themselves coming to me to pitch a product. So I think that sentiment is probably shared um, by folks who run firms.
Yeah. No, I think I've started saying, like, instead of sending 1,000 people an email written by AI, like, just spend 3 hours on one prospect and, like, really deeply understand that prospect, and then, like, mail them a note that you handwrite. Your chance of closing them or getting a meeting will, like, go up exponentially if they know that you spent, like, 3
Yeah,
hours to get
and
to
and
know the
not
firm.
only that, but, for the clients that you do have, making sure that you really understand them and that you're staying on top of their needs and anticipating struggles that they may have that you can come in and help them with in the future. I mean, that's a big value. So if you're on the service provider side, it's a really wide net that we're casting there. But whether you're a fund manager, you make a technology product, you do outsourced operations, whatever it is, it's really valuable to be able to add a group of firms to a watch list and just get a notification that, hey, this firm added a new CCO,
Yeah,
right? That could be really important for you to know and stay on top of. And that's going to be something that even free users can do is create a little watch list and get notifications. So it's really just all about elevating everybody's collective understanding. Because when data is democratized and we all have access to this stuff, everybody's experience just gets much better. So from
yeah.
the end investor to the private equity firm that's looking to roll up 10 RIAs into a mega RIA platform, um, everybody's going to have a better time with that process if we all have data to kind of inform our decisions.
Yeah, for sure. No, especially in the work I do around tech stacks, I was doing those like real tech stacks, but then I would include screenshots from RA Pulse to show like, this is this size firm, this is the tech they're using, and that just adds more context to each individual tech stack, which I think is super helpful for advisors.
Yeah, absolutely, and being able to have charts that you might want to export out of RIA Pulse, and hey, everybody knows that that's going from the regulatory data, so it's not just a chart that Joe pulled out of nowhere. It's from a central spot that we can all kind of agree is no, it's not real time data, but it is coming from the real authorities, which are the SEC. So features like that for folks like you, even to who write a lot and people who write publications, we're giving them tools to export charts and visualizations and information out of. So yeah, we're really excited to roll this out because what we really like to be is this sort of beloved information repository that we can all kind of rally around and create a lot of value together.
No, that's really cool. And I can thank you. My best post on LinkedIn for like a year was my post about RAA Pulse and the top firms using Altruist. It got more impressions than anything else
Yeah,
for a year.
yeah, and I know that folks had some opinions about about that, and it's important to know as much as I would love to tell you that that we have 100% of all there is to know about RIAs, right? The fact is, this is coming from regulatory filings, so it's what the firm reported, which is accurate to the point that if you misreport information, you're risking an audit. So we're getting it from the firms themselves, but that doesn't mean that 100% of the information is available. So if you go and use our affiliate filters to filter by custodians, I think was
Yep.
what that post was. You're going to get a list of everybody who has said that they custody with Altruist. But there might be more that either haven't filed that information yet or they just don't file it in general for whatever reason. So it is important for people to know that. Um, but once again, that's nothing different than any of the other publications that like industry research papers that you may have read because that's also where they're getting the information from too. So we're bringing it directly to you rather than giving you a report once a quarter.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, I've loved using it myself from the time I first found it. I've loved getting to know you. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, no, likewise. We've gotten a lot of. I have you to thank personally for a lot of the traction that we've got because that post blew things up and really highlighted. Wow, there's a real need here, and so a lot of the reason why on a personal level, it's really, really hard to build a software company.
Yeah.
And it's much harder when you're bootstrapping, and it's even harder when nobody knows who you are and you're building this thing that people are like, I don't really get it. What exactly is it and who is it for? But sharing what's available there and just taking screenshots and posting things out, that has been like the biggest help for us, whether it was you or some other folks who have kind of shared that around. And yeah, we're really excited to get this new version to everybody's hands.
Sweet. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jace, for coming on today's podcast.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye bye.